Welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scott McTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks podcast.
That's the beauty of having a superior product, is that if you're able to demonstrate that you have a better product, you don't really have to Jones them as much. You don't really have to fear of loss them and, oh my gosh, like it's ending tomorrow or anything. You can just give them a preliminary education on why your product is better and play off the indifference of it, and they're going to go for it every time.
Hey everybody, it's Scott. It's Wednesday and it's the Pitchwerks podcast. Thanks for tuning in as always. This week I've got Maddi Love from WebKite. She's the director of sales over there. And those of you that love the hard content stuff are really going to like this week's show. Maddi is going to blow your mind a little bit, and I'm really glad to have her. WebKite. Okay, so I don't want to ruin the surprise. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. Let's just say WebKite helps you to optimize your ad spending on Google. There's cool stuff going on here. There's a machine learning play. There's a, just basically like, how do we do a better job of driving, and I'm going to borrow her word, purchase ready buyers over to your sales team. It's cool stuff. Before we get started, you know that I've got to ask you to rate and review the show because Buzzy, he gets really mad when I don't do that. And, we don't want Buzzy to be cranky. Rate and review in iTunes. Just give us a star rating. Tell us why you picked that rating. Let us know what's up. It's how we improve the show, and it's how other people find the show, that would be right for them. And we hope to be that show. So let's do that. Let's talk to Maddi. Let's find out about machine learning and Google ads. And like I said, this is a cool deep dive. All right, coming to us from WebKite, Maddi Love, how are you?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm a little punchy, It's been a long night in the studio. You and I think we went a little too long just doing the pre-show, shooting the breeze. And I don't know, I'm all fired up but tired at the same time.
It's an interesting feeling.
Yeah, it'll be all right. I'm caffeinated, I guess, is part of the problem. So WebKite is sort of like a faster way to distribute effective ads.
I'll just say ad tech is an interesting kind of area right now, just because there's an education level necessary with it. And it can either be a very basic education or it can be incredibly technical, but the mid area is where you get really tripped up. So we try to explain it really simply to people. So we do dynamic inventory-based advertising.
Oh, wow. Dynamic inventory-based advertising.
Yes.
It actually is pretty clear just in that short description. I get it. So I have an inventory. Let's pick
cars.
See, that's a good idea. That's the one I was going to go. So let's pick cars. I have an inventory of cars, and you're going to give me, if I'm a WebKite client, you're going to give me dynamic advertising that is specific to the inventory I'm carrying in my, let's say, dealership lot or in my storage facility somewhere. Tell me how that works. I'm a sales manager at a car dealership. What do I do to make this happen?
Yeah, so being on Google nowadays is incredibly necessary in order to promote your brand, in order to sell inventory, for everything. You have to be on Google. That's just the reality of it. The interesting thing about car dealerships is a lot of them are starting to realize that now, and they're starting to kind of take it into their own hands.
Interesting. You say they're just starting to realize it now.
Yeah, it's a little bit behind.
I'm not trying to insult your client. I'm really trying to understand.
Yeah, so my take on the car industry in general is in terms of tech, it's typically about 5 to 10 years sort of behind on that stuff.
Yeah.
Which they are coming actually out with a lot of new things and they're getting more caught up faster and faster. But there was kind of this lag there, especially when it comes to Google and ad tech stuff. So what we do is we use machine learning to go ahead and generate hundreds of thousands of keywords in minutes.
Wow.
For individual inventory items. So
that's a big number.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big number.
So it's not something a person could replicate.
So we go ahead and we utilize machine learning. You kind of can think of it as an army has generals, right?
Okay.
So we send these generals to for example, car dealership site. Mm-hmm. These generals then go and deploy their army, right?
Strategically picking where to go.
Exactly. So we're deploying an army, but really we're only commanding a general.
Okay.
So if that's kind of an easy bite-sized way of looking at it.
Right.
But since we're able to use machine learning to kind of generate all of these ads, we're able to go ahead and really focus in on the individual inventory items, all the specific details, features, sunroof, color, mileage, under 20,000, whatever you need.
Yeah.
And index all of that. So we're able to advertise effectively then to that individual vehicle, because when you think about a purchase-ready buyer, if I'm going to go buy a car today, I'm going to probably have an idea of what I want.
I'm looking for something.
Right.
Yeah.
So do I want an SUV? Do I want a sedan?
I was looking for a car for my wife.
Okay.
And she knew what she wanted. And I knew generally sort of what I thought was going to generate the right results.
Yeah.
Because it is really hard.
It is.
I'll give you 2 examples really quick that I learned in real life. When you have a car model that's a number, you get a bunch of junk results, right?
Yeah,
so that's
terrible.
not always like really a good thing when you're Googling, right?
Well, right now though, but for people that work with us, that is actually the first thing that pops up then.
Okay.
So, and you have to think that ad is incredibly specific. It has the exact model that you were looking for. And it's going to cost substantially less on AdWords because it is that specific and it doesn't have a high level of competition with it.
That's an insanely useful interjection you just made, right? Because no, that's a killer use case. There's so much frustration, right? Let's just take like I don't know, BMW, right?
Yeah.
They have a 3-digit model number in a lot of these cases, and they do change them, right? So it's like they used to be, I don't know, the 328, the 528, and then all of a sudden one day they were like, let's make 35, let's make 25,
Right.
And now all of a sudden it does kind of feel like just these numbers could come from anywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of a pick of the hat.
Right. And now my results are all over the road. So that is actually, I'm really glad you jumped in with that now somehow or another, and again, let's not get too deep into how the engine works, but that result there is a killer application.
Right. Because if you had just typed in that number, in that model number for that vehicle, and you were served an ad for it, chances are you were going to click that ad, go to that site, and either fill out a form or have some sort of actionable item from that.
Yeah.
Because you already knew what that model was and you knew that you wanted it. It's just right now when you type it in, as you mentioned, you get kind of a lot of random results. You'll get to go to cars.com. Like random things will show up and it's not useful.
Yeah. You get stuff that wasn't even close to it. Like you get like, here's a headlamp assembly for,
Right. And then you have to back it out and then you just have to search BMW and then you get very vague results.
No, I got really good quotations and like minus signs in my Google Ninja skills, right? But this was still my experience in real life.
Right.
And then the other piece of it is there's a discouragement factor, right? Like you get to a point where like, you know what, this isn't a priority, and I walk away. Right. And you just go like, if I can't find what I'm looking for, maybe I'll do it tomorrow. And tomorrow really, it's not, when I say tomorrow, I really mean like next month.
Yeah, it's not an actionable item.
Because it's not like my car is dead. It's not like
you can use it. It's not necessarily an immediate thing that you need, but it's one of those things where if it was shown to you in the proper fashion when you were actually looking for it and in the 5 minutes that you have to find that,
you could have got my impulse, which is exactly what I wanted.
Right. I could have reached out to you then as a car dealership and said, hey, I know you're interested in this because you fill out a form in under 5 minutes because you got to our site immediately. You landed on the page that you wanted. You didn't have to go through searches and you were able to send that in to me at a traffic light.
You know what's interesting about that is it makes me want to ask you a question that you may not have the answer to, but no. I'm fascinated by the concept, right?
Yeah.
Because I've always been sort of discouraged whenever I hit the form, right?
Yes.
But I wonder if I found what I was looking for really fast, would I be more willing to fill out a form? And I think the answer is yes, is why I'm fascinated by it. Like if I could find, let's keep building the same use case we're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm looking for this BMW model number car. And I get it. It's white. It's got a sunroof. It's got the buttons I wanted. It's got the miles I wanted.
Sure.
And I've already found it. And I know that it's close enough to my house that I can actually pull a trigger on it. And they give me a form in, let's say, 2 minutes or less.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly do. And I'm trying to inject myself into the situation. So it's not like I'm really in the market right now. But I think I might be a lot more likely to fill out the form because it doesn't feel like additional friction on top of something that was already trying my patience. Does this line up with what you're learning or hearing?
So there's 3 ways of really contacting out of Google AdWords. One is via text message through the text extensions. It's not necessarily a conversion of sorts, but it is available. There's also the calling and actually phoning in, and then there's the form submissions.
Yeah.
My general rule of thumb with form submissions and what I advise all of our clients is that if someone cannot do it at a traffic stop, it is not worth doing, and you need to change it accordingly. These ones that ask for all of your information, what you want, you have to send a message, everything like that. It's not useful to the average person that is doing a million things in today's society.
Well, I like the way you do this.
So you have to do it at a stoplight.
It's the second time you said the stoplight thing. I'm curious if that's because you think they see what they want while they're driving.
Maybe, but I think more just the time variable is really good. If you think about it, when you check your text when you're driving, right? Like at a stoplight, if on average.
Exactly.
Right.
When there's no risk to it.
Right. When you're not moving in a vehicle.
Yeah.
And it's something that's quick and it's on the go. So you can liken it to a stoplight. You can liken it to your 5-minute break at work. You can liken it to getting your coffee down the street.
Being stuck outside the Fort Pitt tunnels. Wait, that's half an hour.
Yeah, right. So it's one of those things that it just has to be a short enough occurrence where it's not going to take someone more than 30 seconds to fill out with their own information, because then people aren't going to do it and they get scared of forms.
That's what I'm saying.
It's unpleasant then.
But I don't think it's the form. I think it's the process has now extended past my tolerance, right? Like I have a window, and I bet if you started watching, you'd see it's a certain mark where people start to fall off. Like it's 3 minutes or it's, 18 seconds, 45 minutes. I don't know what the number is. But it's like between the searching, the shopping, the, double checking to make sure that the result was actually what you were looking for and everything. I wonder what that total number is, because I feel pretty confident that I'm a lot more agreeable to this idea of sharing my information if I'm still within this really short, I think it's under 5 minutes that I do all those steps. So I don't know. That's what I was wondering. Like, is there even a way for you to check that?
There's tracking that we have on things that tell us what the bounce rate is, time on site, all of that. And what we've seen is that sometimes if you can eliminate a couple of minutes from that, you're going to get a conversion.
Yeah.
So
you're feeling it.
Yeah.
When you look at the stats right now.
Yeah. So for example,
let me think that I discovered it. Okay. Just for me, just for my ego.
It's all you.
Oh God, Maddi, you're the best.
So if you look at the ads that we run, for example, they're detailed. If you were to go ahead and click one, you're going to land directly on that individual vehicle's page. Yeah. Whereas many right now will either throw you to a third-party site, they'll throw you on the dealer's page, but it'll be like a search area where if you
I've
wanted,
seen this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like 10 results then, and you have to find the one. But every time you make someone go to another page, you're going to lose 60 to 80% of viewership. And that's just reality.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So
60 to 80% just from shifting pages, which I do believe, but it's the first time anybody's ever said it to me.
Yeah. So it's a vague statistic because they don't have it's hard to track, right?
Hard to pin down, yeah.
And so on average, it's anywhere between 60 and 80% of viewership, the more you make people click through. So dropping them immediately onto the page that they want is incredibly important, and making sure that the form then is easy enough for them to fill out in a matter of seconds instead of minutes.
That's cool.
Is really important too, because they're content with being on the correct page. Yeah. And it kind of eases people into a form a little bit more, whereas they may not have previously filled it out because they're frustrated or they hit their limit. Like you said, you hit a point where you're like, maybe.
Like we're now getting past what I wanted to invest. Right. Like now it's starting to feel like it's just work.
Right. Right.
It's like what was supposed to be fun maybe isn't fun anymore. Right. Have you heard of this phenomenon where people forget things when they walk into a new room? Like you walk through and then you forget why you walked in.
Yeah.
People do this all the time. They walk into a room and they can't remember why they went there. And it's because something about the human brain makes it so that a new setting, a new room actually sort of hits a reset button, and then you have to stop and think your way through. And it sounds like you're actually playing with the same psychological concept right now, because when you change pages, it's kind of like you sit down to, I got to send an email to so-and-so. And then you see what's in your inbox. You've walked into a new room. Your brain and your memory just hit the reset button. This is interesting. I like that. Now, you have a background in sales.
I do.
And you're selling to sales organizations. And,
Yeah.
and what I'm hearing is that this is very much like car dealerships, and your website even suggests very strongly that car dealerships are kind of like a really good vertical for you, right?
Mm-hmm. They're a strong vertical for us for sure.
Feels like an arms race in the car business because it's so competitive, right?
Yeah.
Like, how much of that figures in? Do you get the question like, well, what's Jones Ford doing that we're not doing? Like, how much is, like, is it a keeping up with the Joneses pitch?
I mean, I think that there's a level of that. There's also a level of fear of loss of what's going to happen if I don't get on Google.
Yeah, fear of loss is definitely a powerful motivator.
And then there's the Jones effect too, which is if this dealership up the street is doing this, then they're going to steal all my customers, right?
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily personally play on those enough. I just let people know very straightforward. I think that when it comes to technology and ad tech, giving a preliminary education on it where it's not too deep, but it lets people understand that it's not just like this crazy god of Google and algorithms.
Well, I mean, that's actually where I was going to go. Like, I think you're right about the fear of loss being, you know, one of the factors, but the other factor playing at the other side of it is that they don't feel like they necessarily understand it.
Right.
And it's almost like they should just talk to you. Like, don't research it. Just talk to the person, because you can get lost in the goop. You can get lost in the weeds and then be like, well, just like we were talking about with the, you know, if I'm buying a car and it starts to feel like work, I just kick it down the road for another month or 2 months or a year even. Meanwhile, here's Jones Ford just killing me.
Yeah.
And I may not even be aware because it's a percentage loss. Like it's like a 3% shortage, a 3% shortage, and a 3% shortage. And you don't necessarily notice it. You're the boiling frog, as they say, right?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of that. But I think that that's just kind of inherent to the car dealership. They're very competitive with one another. So out-jonesing one another is kind of just by default what they do.
But do they ask about it? Do they ask what the other guy's doing?
Yeah,
that's what I was really driving at, is like, I was wondering whether or not we've just gotten to the point where it's like, you just need to tell me what the other dealers in my brand are doing.
Yeah.
And if it's if 4 out of 5 are doing it, then I'll be the 5th.
I think that there's a level of kind of out-jonesing one another with the car dealerships, but I think that the most successful thing to do when selling to a vertical like a car dealership is to actually just retain your indifference.
I agree.
Because they're going to constantly pin up against other people. And one thing that I will never, ever do in anything I sell, I never refer to individual competitors, right? If someone asks me how I stack up to a competitor, I'll let them know, but I will make sure that I say the competition. I will make sure I say the competition, and I'm not going to reference them as anything but the competition, because I don't want that client remembering their name.
That's a good play. I actually, an old friend of mine who I just realized I need to reach out to because I haven't talked to him in years. We used to pitch together sometimes. He worked for one company, I worked for another, and sometimes we had the privilege to work together. And he used to say, "Our esteemed competitors."
Yeah.
He was, and like, he hated the competition, hated them, right? Because like, he was a company man to the absolute bone. But he had this line where it was just like you're saying, I don't necessarily want to tell you who my competition is. I don't want to talk about them. I don't want to sit here with my battle cards and go part for part, line for line. But he would just say, our esteemed competitors typically charge 30% more for similar services, but I'll notice that I'm not saying the same. And he had this sort of buttery delivery on that. But I want to get back to the sort of keeping up with other dealers. Because what that also means then is somebody has to go first, right? Like, there's always somebody who's the first mover. And that's the nature of being the arms race, right? Tell me who the first mover tends to be. What is the first mover, like the person who's not afraid to go first? Are there common threads?
I mean, our first kind of movers and shakers were all people who just weren't getting results from their current set of advertising limitations. And
is it possible that they're just the people who are measuring them?
I think they were measuring them, and honestly, they were typically people who had new marketing directors.
Interesting.
They had people that had come in really guns a-blazing, like, I'm going to change this up and all of that. And it was one of those things where if you sit down and you educate people, just a preliminary education on what you're going to do, nothing nitty-gritty that starts to confuse people or anything, and then you play onto the indifference of the product and saying, that's the beauty of having a superior product, is that if you're able to demonstrate that you have a better product, you don't really have to Jones them as much. You don't really have to fear of loss them and, oh my gosh, like it's ending tomorrow or anything. You can just give them a preliminary education on why your product is better and play off the indifference of it. And they're going to go for it every time.
I love everything you just said, by the way. No, I'm for real. Like, that was a very deep and detailed answer. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it on behalf of the people that listen. That was really good. I'm going to take it in a different direction now.
Okay.
No. Legit. That was pretty intense, and people may skip over it if I'm like, especially if if you're newer at this, you don't understand how valuable that guidance was that you just got. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, send Maddi a thank you note for what she just educated you on if you're new at this. One of the things that I get a very strong vibe about from you is that you were brought up in a specific sales system. Is that fair to say? Like a trained model that you followed, right?
I was definitely in one of my first jobs out of college was in a very strategic sales position that had a very finite amount of rules and kind of tactics that you were to use. And it gave me a really great kind of preliminary education of the sales world and how to utilize those in not just that particular position, but what worked best for me and how I could bring that to other products. So, you think about the car dealership, and those sales managers that are there are always jonesing people.
Yes.
They're always fear of lossing people. Oh, if you don't sign today, we're going to sell the car and it'll be gone tomorrow.
Sometimes you don't have a tool taken away from you. You just get too used to using one tool over and over again.
So for me, if I'm depending on what I'm approaching, I'm going to use the tactic that those people aren't, because it's foreign to them.
Nice.
They haven't necessarily acquired it. They haven't understood it, or they don't use it for some combination of reasons. Yeah. But in our case, in our example of a car dealership, that's primarily indifference.
Yes. Yes, it is. Now, this is all sort of adding up to a point that you may not even want me to come to, which is this. Marketing and advertising are two different things, right? But a lot of times it gets conflated. Like, not just in car dealerships, I mean everywhere, right?
Yeah, everyone has a sales and marketing director.
That's what I mean, right?
Advertising and marketing, yeah.
And your official title is Director of Sales for WebKite, right?
Yes.
So you have an understanding of this where, like, people will be like, well, have you thought about new marketing? And you're like, I didn't say marketing at any point in my introduction.
Right.
They're not the same thing.
Right.
So a lot of times you have a salesperson making a marketing decision. And I want to tie this to the idea of accountability. In my experience, and I'm putting words in your mouth right now, so if it makes you look bad, you got to, you got to blame it on me. I feel a lot of times that when a sales manager is playing out a position as a marketing manager, accountability goes out the window. There's no stats. There's no tracking. They don't know the conversion rates and the bounce rates and things that you've mentioned earlier in this interview, right?
Right.
They think marketing is about pretty pictures and like, how many ads did you buy? Not how good were the ads and how do people engage with them? Is this a fair statement?
Yeah. And, in some verticals it is. How pretty is the picture, right? But for a lot of people, using vague stats, not tracking things, not knowing the data behind it is counterproductive to whatever they're doing. And not having some kind of foundation of knowledge is additionally counterproductive.
I watch people run to marketing because they think it's low accountability, right? Like I'm not trying to insult people. I am trying to point out that if you don't take a real assessment of your skills and your understanding around you, then you're just kidding yourself, right?
Yeah. And I mean, even so, if you think about any marketing class you may have taken in high school or college, right? It was usually very vague. Yeah. And it was kind of like, oh, well, depending on what industry you go into.
Depending on what the data tells you is like, that's as deep as you're going to go into that.
But when you get into a real position, you have a real company, you need to know that data. You need to know how it all works together. It can't be a vague set of statistics. It has to be something that you're able to work off of and facilitate so that you're able to get the sales that you need.
Marketing in a lot of people's minds is handled by the sales manager, and the sales manager's metric for marketing is, do we have marketing? Yes, no.
It's a checkbox.
It's a checkbox. And that doesn't sound terribly useful when you're talking about the spending of all these dollars, right? And that, I'm glad I didn't put you too far into a uncomfortable position.
No, you're fine.
Well, it's not the most popular opinion that I have.
No, I mean, but you're right in that effect. A lot of people just decide whether they have marketing or not necessarily drill into the data of how it's done or what's best for that company. And then you also have to think about people have their own personal preferences on what they want to obtain or show for their brand as well, which may be super counterproductive to their actual strategy that they should have based on data.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
they just go by their gut and then they defend based on why they think it should have been right.
Yeah. And so if you're thinking, a lot of people in sales think of marketing as a means to get sales, but marketing is in itself a whole nother kind of aspect. It is used to get sales, yes. But if you approach it as this is only used to get sales and this is only used to do X, Y, and Z, you're kind of putting yourself in a hole at that point.
I've always defined marketing as increasing the speed of inbound leads, right?
Right.
I typically in that definition skip the data aspect of it because people don't usually care about that part. It's not that I don't understand that it's there. It's very difficult from an ROI perspective to explain that to a business owner. And remember, I'm coming a lot of times from a consultant's perspective, right?
Yeah.
And before any of this lavish fiefdom that you see around you existed, I should have said this earlier. I sold cars, right? Like I was a car salesman 20 years ago, right?
You did tell me that, yeah.
They did put me in charge of ads.
Yeah.
But back then it wasn't Google placements with, like keyword A/B testing and that sort of thing. There was no way that we could do hundreds of thousands of things. So this is a very new phenomenon. And I was a kid. I mean, 20 years ago, I would have been 21 years old. And when the, the Auto Trader rep or right? You think about these people.
They're still around too. That's the craziest thing. They still come with the Auto Trader magazines to dealerships.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's weird when you think about ROI from that perspective. Like I literally didn't have any idea what I was going to say to that person when she came around. Right. And I can see her in my head. It was same rep the whole time I was there. And she'd just come around and she's like, do you know what cars you want to put in the mag this week? And I'd go, I don't know. The Acura's been here for a while, and the stick shift Mustang needs to go. And that was kind of like, that was the extent of it. And everybody was happy. And in 20 years' time, here we are with hundreds of thousands of keywords and people having a low tolerance for waiting and all these other different things. So, what other verticals? Let's get out of cars. What other verticals do you want to get into?
So we do a lot in real estate as well.
Nice.
So you have to think if you're purchasing a home, you're also going to be looking for very specific keywords. Colonial style, right? 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. You're going to be putting these specific
first floor master.
Exactly. School districts. That kind of stuff is what people search. And right now, you usually have to go to a third-party site to find that, and you have to go through a ton of check boxes of, yes, I like this, no, like 4+. It's the same as like booking, something on Airbnb. It's like there's all these filters you have to put to find the individual house that you want. And if you could just type into Google, like 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom home near X, Y, and Z school district and have an ad pop up that gave you the option of a house that is in that area for sale, you're going to click that first before clicking Zillow.
There's no question.
If you know what you want and like that shows up, then, then that's where we have the conversation of we are driving purchase ready buyers.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, that is a purchase transaction that there's no impulse. It is all work. Like the thing we were talking about under cars where it's like, I don't know. That jaunty convertible can wait till another day. Houses are a totally different
and they're
animal.
Fast. Yeah. So if you can make it even faster by showing up first, And if you can lessen that sale time by 3 days or something, that's going to save a lot of money overall.
But
and
also
it's
just your
move
mental
it.
health about it. Like I hated when we bought our house.
Oh, it sucks.
It was murder. I seriously, I'm looking at her. I'm like, this is torture. You do it.
It's awful.
And
Yeah.
she's looking at me like, you've lost your mind. I'm not doing this.
It's awful. Yeah, it's not a fun process, and you just kind of want to get what you want as fast as you can without having to jump through 80,000 hoops. But for the people that really just need to move and they need to find a place to live, and they have features and aspects that they want to have in that individual house or apartment or whatever kind of living area you have.
Yeah.
To be able to find that quickly and efficiently, and to be able to provide the actual client who is advertising it that at a low cost, because we utilize these long tail keywords and because we're able to go ahead and generate so many keywords and so many ads that are so applicable to that house, it's kind of just a win-win for everyone. And that's where, the conversation again comes back to purchase ready buyers. So if someone's ready to buy and they are purchase ready, you want to move them and get them into a house as fast as possible. You don't want them to kind of hang around because that's where you hit the level of boredom or they get frustrated or exhausted with the process.
Or they see another house.
Totally.
Don't forget that part. I mean,
No, you're totally right. So
from the car business, one of my favorite sayings was time kills all deals.
It does.
It's true. I mean, yeah, when you were coming up, they probably taught it to you too, whatever, things you were selling.
Yeah, you got to work on impulse.
The longer it goes on, the more likely an alternative will present itself. And sometimes, most times, the alternative is buying nothing or doing nothing. Yeah,
or pushing it to, like you said, to next week, which ends up being next month because you're like, I just don't want to do this.
No.
And that's kind of what we try to do with WebKite is how do we give this person who is typing in these keywords that is not generating anything of substance to them something that is substantial and is instinctive to them and is going to draw them in for that particular customer. And that's why having so many ads and so many keywords is important because you don't pay for volume on Google. You only pay for what gets clicked. So you want to make sure that you're matching individual ads with individual customers.
Nice. I forgot about that part. You don't pay unless there's actually a click. So that scale, actually, I was going to ask you sort of about that. Like that scale does make it seem like it would be $1 million spend. But when you say it that way, it's really only what gets clicked, which means it's only the number of people who are actually interested in whatever your scale of inventory is.
Yeah.
So you can only sell a car one time, right? You can only sell a house one time.
Right.
So once it's gone, and people are, the hundreds of thousands may not be clicked. You're going to get a few purchase-ready buyers, to use your terminology, which I totally love, by the way, and then it's going to disappear because you found the right person. The whole point was Yahtzee. We got the right person.
Right. So match the car with the buyer, match the house with the buyer, and move on.
You're a friggin' genius, right?
No, I'm not, but thank you so much.
You kind of are, and it's been a great pleasure having you flash that genius around this place. Maddi Love, thanks for coming in.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's all the time we've got. Thanks, Maddi. Thanks, everybody over at WebKite. Check them out at webkite.com. Again, I'm just a huge fan of this conversation. I had a lot of fun geeking out. I hope you did too. Buzzy and I are going to go make another episode of this fine program. We will catch you on Wednesday morning. Don't forget, subscribers get it first, and all of the rest of you have to sit around and wait for me to release it. It's not fair, I tell you. We'll catch you then.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and McTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, pitchwerks.